We left out of camp that early afternoon, right after lunch, and proceeded up the creek bed, and it was, of course, it was October 20th. The maple trees were beautiful, yellow and red in colors, and the sun was up nice and warm. So we ride along there just real leisure-like, because we had quite a little ways to go, and we figured we'd get there just about dark, make camp, and then the next day we'd ride out for wherever we were looking, the areas that we were going to try to cover again. Well, we were about 3.5 miles from our camp, riding up the creek bed. We come around a big downfall tree, and any of you don't know what I'm talking about. This was had been washed down, roots up from that early flood in 63, 64, I think it was. I wasn't down there when that all happened, but anyway, this tree, this big downfall tree, apparently rerouted the creek around it because there was a low jam type below it, jammed up about 15, 16 feet high, that had been washed down and then lodged in the valley, lodged in the rocks and the trees. When Roger and I went around this big downfall tree, Roger was riding in front of me on his saddle horse, and of course I was just riding along the back of him about 10, 15 feet, leading the pack horse. And Roger's, all at once, Roger's horse just, and I refrain saying blowed up, because people say, well, how did it blow up? Did it blow to pieces? Well, an old phrase is, when a horse acts up a lot, you can't handle it real well, you kind of call it blowed up. Well, anyway, this all happened, and Roger bailed off his horse, jerked his camera out of the saddlebags, which his horse helped him a little bit get off, because it was rearing and lunging and jumping, and of course that brought my attention to what was all happening. I look across the creek, which we were about 15 feet from the edge of the creek. The creek was about 12, 13 feet, maybe 15 feet across, about 18 inches deep. And Roger went off the horse really rapid with his camera and ran across the creek. By that time, the creature had started walking away, and Roger fell down. There was a little raise in the edge of the creek there, and Roger stumbled and fell down because he had the camera to his head. And if any of you folks have seen that footage before, at the beginning you'll see it a kind of a jumbled mess, and it's kind of, you can see that he's not doing real well with the camera. So he got back up and stabilized himself on a small log. And I don't know how many of you have seen that diagram that different ones have made. And a gentleman from Vancouver, British Columbia by the name of Chris Murphy probably made the best one of any of them, if you ever get the opportunity to see that. So Roger stabilized himself on that log and kept filming the creature as it walked away. And it got quite a little ways away, probably 200 feet, maybe 3. It's pretty hard to tell. We never measured that afterwards. But anyway, Roger said, "Bob, will you cover me?" And I knew exactly what he meant, of course. He said, "I've got to relocate in a better position so I can get a better view of the creature." And by that time it was making kind of an arc around, and so I rode my horse across the creek, stepped down off the horse, and we both had saddle scabbards with rifles. And of course Roger's horse left and went right back down the creek the way we were coming up. I still had my horse under control the best I could. He was a bit antsy about it a little bit, but he was an older horse, kind of a seasoned old roping horse. So he wasn't near as tough to handle as Roger's little waspy little horse that he was riding. Well, I rode across the creek, took my rifle out of the scabbard with no intention at all to fire a shot unless I felt it was completely necessary. And in the event that the thing turned around, I knew what I was looking at, but I had no idea what to expect. And I really wasn't afraid, I don't think. I'm not going to say that, because probably I was and just didn't know it. But anyway, I took the rifle down. I never raised it to my shoulder. I kept watching this creature walk away from us. She got up there a ways, and I heard Roger. Well, she was almost out of sight. And I don't even know why I had an urge just to follow her. So I got back up on the horse and Roger started yelling at me. I ran out of film, Bob, don't leave me. And of course, I didn't know at the time that Roger was a little apprehensive to be left there, because we see one, and the area could have been some back in the trees, and there's been speculation on that since that said yes, there was evidence that there were some back in the trees. But I never saw him, and talking to Roger afterwards, he never saw him. So we'll just write that off as if they might not have been there. Well, anyway, as the thing goes on, I went to catch Roger's horse up for him so he could put film back in get the film out of the saddlebags and put it in the camera. We did that, and so then naturally we both decided that we would go ahead and follow where she went, where she disappeared up this other little draw, little canyon type thing. Well, we rode up there by then, and I don't know if any of you are real familiar with the distance of the footprints, but it was over 40 inches in between the stride. In the sand that we had the evidence that was made. But when we got up to where she disappeared out of our sight, all it was gravel alongside the creek. We couldn't accurately measure that, so the scuffs in the gravel, the best we could do was 68 to 72 inches in the stride. And I've tried this a few times before. I picked the tallest man I could find in the crowd and have him come up and make a normal walking stride for me. Well, it was not even easy for the tallest guy I could get a hold of, sometimes was 6'6", to make the same stride that the creature made in the soil, the type of soil that left the great footprints. And strictly impossible for him to make a 68 or 72 inch stride, even almost by jumping. So we assumed that for some unknown reason to us, and we never really give it a whole lot of thought at the time, that this creature must have ran after it got out of our sight. And there's been a lot of speculation on that, and we also wondered why it would run, why it would walk while we were there, run when we weren't there.